You are listening to Uncomfortably Creepy. Let's begin. Watcher in the Woods. This was possibly the weirdest encounter I've ever had. It happened after I dropped a friend off after a late night of films at my flat. The route to and from her home back to mine was straightforward. However, on this evening, there were roadwork cutting off nearly all routes back to my home. I must have circled the only open roundabout about 10 times before deciding to take an exit that I knew eventually connected to my town. This exit went through an isolated and rural area, which meant my phone's network and mobile data stopped working. I'd grown up not far from here and had driven through this area before during the day, so I felt up to the task. This area had a large woodlands. I was aware these woods had developed a reputation for being dangerous after dark. Initially due to drug deals, but in the last few years due to a series of stabbings that had gone unsolved. They're still unsolved, I think. They're not the kind of woods anyone could or would want to camp in overnight, or spend time in generally. I wasn't quite sure if I had a sharp turn or exit incoming, and so I drove very slow down the road. I'd only been going for about a minute until something clanged against my car. Not that I hit something, no, something struck my car while I was moving. I stopped my car immediately and pulled over to the side of the road. I debated getting out to check the damage, but chickened out. It was past 2 a.m. I was parked next to a dense woods, and like a horror movie, too much to be too silly. I adjusted the side mirrors to check the damage, and luckily, I had parked under a streetlight, so could see fairly well. I needed to know what damage there was and potentially take pictures for my insurance. Oddly, there was a screwdriver on the ground a few feet behind my car, right where I had heard the clang, sat out in the middle of the road. I didn't have time to take pictures because something caught my eye on the other side of the road, in the woods. The streetlights on the other side of the road lit up a few feet into the woods, and under that yellow light, something had moved. I'm not sure if he moved or turned around, but that's when I first noticed him. In the woods, just a foot or so back from the road, was a man. I could see his detail in the streetlight and remember it so clearly because it was so weird to see another person at that time of night in such rural and isolated place. He had his back to me. He was mid-height, wore a black leather jacket and dark blue jeans. He had a pale white skin and a reddish hair. He was stood still and his posture was very upright. His hands were by his side, unclenching and clenching, and he kept his back to me the entire time. His head was positioned like he was looking straight ahead in the woods, but it just looked pitch black from where I was sat. There were no other cars parked or even driving by on the road, besides this man and me in my car. The road and the rest of the woods looked empty. Before he could turn around or potentially throw something else, I sped out of there, side mirrors all askew. When I checked my car in the morning, I did have a new scratch in the paint, as well as a slow leak in the tire. But frankly, that'd been the last thing on my mind when I eventually got home that night. I wonder what would have happened if I had got out of my car and examined the damage. I can't rationalize why anyone would be standing in those woods at 2 a.m. with his back to me. To the random stranger who probably threw a screwdriver at my car and turned your back so I wouldn't see your face, let's not meet again. Now I pay for parking, preferably in a garage with lots of light. I haven't always made the best decisions. I can be quite impulsive, impatient, and above all, cheap. Such decisions have left me in some questionable situations, but despite my propensity for being absolutely stupid, I'm still kicking, and that's what really matters. The circumstances of my deceptiveness had led me down a few interesting roads, literally and figuratively, and one of those roads is the one in which I decided to park on a cool fall night. For a bit of context, this story happened a few years ago in a large American city during the Kia carjacking TikTok craze. Naturally, just before the craze begun, I traded in my total 2010 BMW for a 2020 Kia It was about 2 weeks after the trade-in the USB cord became crime paraphernalia set to target my specific vehicle. Seriously, poor timing. I was in college living with a couple of other girls, and one of my roommates and I were desperately needing a night out. A new, very popular casual restaurant has opened in a different part of town. Being the only one with a car and with poor public transportation access to the area, I drove one of my roommates and a friend, female, early 20s, over to the area where the restaurant had opened. It was still light out, but traffic had been bad getting over there, and we were hungry, so when we realized the parking garage was full, I decided I'd just go find a place to park on the side of the street. For a bit of context, in the city, there are areas that go from super ritzy to yikes very, very fast, and I parked right on the cusp. I parked right in front of a row of older townhouses a few blocks from the restaurant. I jokingly told the others that I would remember this for next time because it's free parking. Spoiler, I've never parked there again. There were a few cops down the street, a ways with the lights going, but this isn't super unusual. So I locked my car and we began to trek for food, assuming we would be back within an hour and before the sun fully set. The joke was on us. The line wrapped around the building, so our quick casual dinner at a new restaurant turned into a 3-hour wait for some mediocre greasy food. But by the time we were walking back, it was well after dark. And the crowds we'd walked through on the way there all but dissipated. By the time we got away from the restaurant, I quickly realized my parking mistake as a very obviously strung-out man began following us. He was yelling something illegible at us, but the drugs had left him rather uncoordinated. So we picked up the pace and put a sizable distance between us and him. The mood lifted after we lost him. The third girl with us had apparently been entirely oblivious to the situation and was utterly confused as to why we had begun nearly running. Frankly, I'm really glad we encountered that man because perhaps it put us a little more on edge from when we encountered the bicyclist. None of us noticed him at first. He was a scrawny guy, but young, no helmet, and dressed in all black, to include a black backpack. He was standing on his bike pedals and focused straight ahead, but that isn't what really stood out. What really stood out is that the bicyclist had started making large circles around us. I can't say for certain when it first started or when it clicked the same guy had made several sweeping circles around us. But gradually, as we made our way towards my car, the circles became smaller and smaller, almost as if he was hurting us. This was not some drunk, strung-out junkie on the sidewalk. It was calculated. We turned onto the street where my car was parked, and with the onset of night and a noticeable lack of street lamps, the neighborhood no longer simply looked old, it looked forgotten. My car was in sight now, and our jokes had long since cascaded. We were moving as a collective as quietly as we could towards my car. I had my keys out and was about to hit the unlock button so we could run the rest of the way to my car. I had it planned in my head. Get to the car before the cyclist got any smaller. But wait, what had just moved beside my car? I couldn't exactly see what was beside it, but from the faint light cast from the nearby porch lamp, I could tell there was something beside it. Thinking quickly, I moved my thumb over the lock button because I knew it would cause my car to flash lights and honk. This was enough. A 6-foot, roughly 200-pound man, dressed in all black, shot up from beside my passenger side of my car and began to run towards a nearby townhouse. But he wasn't alone. There was someone else, a second large man waiting for him on the porch. About the same time, the cyclist peeled off from the circles, and with much shouting, he began to sprint towards my car. I didn't realize my Kia could make such a tight turn, but the U-turn I made peeling out of that parallel parking job, with my friends screaming to go, 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 must have been peak in my automotive career. At the time, we were throwing out theories about what these men wanted. Was it our bags, something in the car, us? Surely not our leftovers. What would have happened if I had just been two of us? What if I had been alone? I scoured my car that night for any signs that it could have been tracked or followed. There was nothing. Looking back, I highly suspect they were going to try to steal my car or possibly more likely my tires, though that didn't really explain why they were on the passenger side or why the cyclist was circling us. Maybe they saw us climbing out of the car and had kept tabs on us all night. I'm not sure, and I don't really want to be. I am sure of one thing though. To the person crouched beside my car, let's not meet. A man in a truck chased me for blocks. Attention, fellow female runners/walkers. I feel compelled to share an incident, so maybe someone can learn from my mistakes. This took place in/around my neighborhood. I was taking an evening walk with my son. I live in Florida, and the heat can be unbearable during the days. So during those hot months, my daily ritual is taking an evening walk. I shoot for before sunset, but sometimes it's later and already dark. Mistake number 1. Nothing good happens after dark. I left around 8:30. Initially my plan was to be out for a brief 30 to 40 minutes, but my son is the slowest walker in the world. So around 9:30 I noticed a big gray truck. Extremely loud, extended cab, diesel I think, with big red letters along the side. A work vehicle, but I couldn't see the name of the business. All that was legible, because I wasn't trying to stare, was roofing in red. He also attempted to stay behind me at all times, making it difficult to see the business name and his license plate. As I increased my speed, the truck matched my pace. When I stopped to let the vehicle pass, the driver would abruptly slam on the brakes. I would turn down a street, he would do the same. This cat and mouse game went for several more blocks, making me feel nervous and vulnerable. I should have handled the situation differently by seeking help. My phone was dead. Using the flashlight on our long walk drained my battery quickly, so we couldn't call for help. Mistake number 3. At first, the truck having a business name on the side gave me a false sense of security. I assured myself nobody would be that stupid and commit a crime with their work vehicle. Something that stands out can be so easily tracked back to them. His windows were tinted very dark, so I didn't know how many people were in there. I'm coming up to my street, but I do not want him to know where I live or chase me inside an empty house. So instead of heading in the direction of my home, I quickly turned around and walked to a dead-end street, and he slammed on his brakes and put it in reverse and quickly turned onto the same street. I stayed close to fences and buildings along the grass. I walked to the end of the street with him right behind me. I couldn't go any further, so I just stopped and wanted to see what was going on. We stood there for like 90 seconds until I heard a car door open. I picked up my 65-pound son and I ran as fast as I could run, in shitty flip-flops. I was screaming help as loud as I could, but nobody came out. Mistake number 4. I should have screamed fire. I ran towards the main road I had just been on and ran down a different side street. He flies in reverse, squealing tires, gets back to the main road and turns on the street I ran towards. And again, I stay close to buildings, away from street lamps. I found some hedges and bushes where it was dark and crouched down low so we could fit in the small gap. My kid is autistic and is really starting to freak out. He grunts and claps when he's anxious/excited, very loud too. When I heard the truck getting closer, basically on the other side of the bushes from us, maybe 40 feet away, I had to cover my son's mouth with my hands. I felt so bad, but my son was so loud, he doesn't understand. I have no doubt if his truck was normal sounding, he would have heard us, but luckily it was so loud. The truck reversed back into the main road, still in reverse, driving slow, scanning the area to figure out where I went, I assume. Thankfully, my dumb decision to wear dark clothes for the night walk worked in my favor, making it hard for him to spot me. After going in reverse for 30 seconds, maybe longer, he put it in drive, still driving slow or stopped. At this point, I can't see him, just hear him. There are trees, bushes blocking him from our view. After another 30 to 45 seconds, the guy finally gave up, its loud engine fading off into the distance. I didn't hear him for like 5 minutes. So my son and I came out from hiding and hurried home. I truly felt like I was gonna have a heart attack trying to open my front door. I just felt so vulnerable. It It's something I've never felt before and I never want to feel again. Although I deeply regret not obtaining the truck's license plate or calling 911 in the moment, I have thought about it a lot since and will always wonder if there was a bored redneck just messing with me or he was planning on doing something sinister. I don't ever leave on walks after dark or with my phone battery less than 40% now. Y'all stay safe. Creepy Dollar Tree man. Here in the States, we have a dollar store called Dollar Tree. My daughter used to love going in just to look around. We went in one afternoon in about 2006. We were just looking around and enjoying our time together in luxury. At the time, she was about 10 years old, so I'd allow her to look at things she wanted on one aisle. As I looked around at items, I'd be on the direct aisle next to it. Every few minutes, I'd go onto this aisle and check on her and see if she wanted to move on to something else. Suddenly, I noticed a tall man just kind of hanging around where we were browsing, and he didn't seem to be looking at anything in particular, and honestly not looking at anything at all. It was more like he was just waiting for something, and it just kind of set my senses off. Gave me a strange vibe. So I went directly to where my daughter was and stayed directly next to her with my hand firmly on her arm. She could tell something was off, looked at me quizzically, but didn't verbally question me. I tried to change aisles but staying in the same area, but within seconds he would be right next to us on the new aisle. I quietly told my daughter to please not ask questions, but just please follow me no matter what I did or where I went. Surprisingly, she did, so because ordinarily she was full of questions about literally everything, I decided I would cross the store to a far corner in the opposite direction, and within a minute he was right behind us. I immediately went to another far off part of the store, same thing. Within a minute, he was right behind us. I did this about 4 to 5 different times, and each time he ended up where we were. The stationery, the grocery area, the makeup aisle, etc. I was very nervous, but I was young and thought about telling an employee, but decided I didn't want to cause a scene. Again, I was a young mom. At some point, I told my daughter the basic of what was going on and told her under no circumstances leave my side or let go of me. I was so freaking out, I just decided we'd check out and come back another day. Well, as soon as we got in line to check out, the man got in line at the register next to me, and it seemed as though it was because that line had roughly the same amount of people, and perhaps he wanted to leave the store as we were leaving. The second we were finished checking out, he headed straight for the door. I told my daughter to take my hand and to not let go no matter what. And again, she did exactly what I said without question. I told her when we got in the car immediately, get in and lock your doors. While I get in, she did so. I chanced to look back and said this man was coming right behind us, but far enough away that we were walking very quickly and had time to get in the car without him catching up. We lived right down the street from the store, but I took a very scenic route home to make sure I wasn't being followed. I don't know what his intentions were, but it felt sinister whether it was or not. To this day, my daughter brings this story up every now and then, and it's been almost 20 years since it happened, and I still get sick to my stomach when I think about it. Whatever he actually wanted, I hope to never be in that situation again. So creepy Dollar Tree man, let's not meet again. A stranger has been breaking into my basement for months, and my roommate and I are just gonna let him. So about 2 years ago, me, 20 female, and my close friend, 20 female, moved into a rental house in a mostly safe city. The house is nice, rent is expensive, landlord forgot we exist, perfect. A few months later, a super sweet family, mom, dad, who is a police officer the next city over, and 2 young kiddos, moved in. This is relevant. The house that we live in, I still live here, has a partially finished basement, mostly underground. Outside access only, with a couple windows. I say partially finished because the owner told me that a tree fell on the house several years ago and the foundation was built around it, so it's just kind of a big gap hole in the back of the basement, basically a huge crawl space. The basement is really creepy, all kinds of random holes in the walls. We have never put anything in there besides a few little Christmas decorations and an old recliner I need to get rid of, and because of that, never felt the need to lock it. In the basement is our hot water heater, and a random empty one not attached to anything that the landlord said has just been there. Another note, the yard is fenced in, and I had a dog who goes between outside and through a doggy door. While we were at work all day, he's a mini Aussie. Is a treat to no one, and trusts absolutely everyone. He will bark at first, but if you don't hurt him and say a few nice words, he would hand you the keys to my house, car, and safety deposit box if he could. In the yard, there's an empty chicken coop left from the owners before and current owners. So not my landlord, but the guy before him. His chicken coop. Both of these things are relevant, I promise. So one day, a few months into living in the house, I'm getting out of my car after work, and neighbor guy, the cop, comes up to me. He tells me that a man in a red truck pulled into the driveway and started trying to get in the backyard. Obviously, my neighbor knows that it's not myself, my roommate, or my boyfriend, so he asks him what he was doing. He tells my neighbor that he wants to look at several numbers on the hot water heater in my basement. My neighbor tells him to go away and come back with one of us or home, because he's a nice neighbor and doesn't know who this dude is trying to come into my yard. Now, my landlord drives a red truck, so at this point, I'm thinking it was him, and he just forgot to let me know he was coming. So I send him a message. It was not him. I have some back and forth with my landlord and neighbor, and we determine the man was the owner of the house before my landlord. Let's call him Jim. Once we figured this out, landlord tells me he'll get a hold of Jim, figure out what he needed and why he was at my house, and we will go from here. Landlord couldn't get a hold of Jim. He does not come back. This is for several days, until I'm at work one day, in my car, on my lunch, and my doorbell camera goes off. I open it, say hello, and there are 2 detectives from a different state knocking on my door. Who are they looking for? Jim. Why are they looking for him? Oh, only because he was wanted for stolen guns and other illicit substances. And my house was an address he had on file. I quickly filled them in on what had happened, and they immediately were suspicious that he had hidden something in the basement or tried to sneak back to get it. I traded numbers with the officers, and they told me to put a lock on the basement door because who knows how long he'd been crawling around in there before my neighbors caught him. Fence is short, and we didn't go in the basement a lot. There's big mean spiders in there. In the time it takes for the detectives to organize local officers to come search my basement, Jim makes 2 more attempts. The first is on my cameras. He rings the doorbell and bangs on my door. The camera's almost dead and doesn't alert me until later, and the image is grainy and discolored, but you can see his face and the red truck in the background. The second is my landlord, Jim, supposedly tells my landlord that he was trying to get the chicken coop out of the backyard, which is not at all what he told my neighbors. Shortly after, I come home one day. The basement door is now locked, and the door to the chicken coop has been open and riffled through. Now I know my little Aussie ain't doing that. Nonetheless, detectives come and search the whole yard and basement area, including the crawl space, and find nothing. Sign all documents, making a couple friends in the few counties. Landlord comes to take the chicken coop. We think since there's nothing there at all, Well, we live in Tornado Alley, so we get some nasty weather. One morning, my roommate and I are out with the dogs after a storm. Not a big one for the area, but decent winds for sure. And we walk around the side of the house. My roommate looks at the house and then looks at me and says, "Has that window always been busted in?" "It has not," Jim strikes again. I unlocked the door and went inside. Smart. Furious that Jim had the audacity to come back months later. All of our things had been ruffled through and moved, recliner shifted, tub opened, decorations skewed about, and that damn empty hot water heater was moved around also. Myself, my family, my work best friend, boyfriend, and detectives all had dug through the basement at this point because we thought we'd find something, but I guess this guy hid his stuff pretty well. So after realizing that the basement was obviously gone through, I called the local cops. Out-of-state detectives can't help unless local cops are involved, so we've been taught. So my friends in other counties are not aware of this. Cops show up, tells the busted window was from the wind, puts it back up and leaves, ignores my stuff thrown around and the fact that the basement has been broken into. We got hit by a tornado a few months later. Trees fell onto the yard, windows were fine, but yeah, you're right, the wind broke into my basement. Anyways, after that last excursion, my roommate and I kinda came to a few realizations. He can't get to the house unless he squeezes through the doggy door, and at that point I would just be impressed by his effort. He didn't really seem interested in the main house, just the stuff he needed to come back to get. B. The local cops aren't helping, so there's no more need to cause a tizzy. C. He probably got what he needed out of the basement the last time anyways, so ideally he'll find another place to stash his stuff. D. We don't have anything valuable in the basement. If Jim wants my nanny's old Christmas ornaments, he can have them. E. He hasn't let my dog out yet, so clearly either my dog likes him and won't leave him alone, or he jumped the fence and endured the Aussie's endless barking and nipping and trying to herd him to his favorite patchy yard. Either way, Jim is not winning there. So pretty much, this guy's been breaking into our basement, and the last time we tried to get help, it was a waste of time. So Jim, please stop stashing your scary bits and bobs in my basement. I'm just a girl, but obviously you don't want to hurt us, so just don't go in the house and don't take my dog. You'll bring him back real quick anyway. Unsettling delivery. This story happened back in fall of 2023. It wasn't a scary experience per se, but it was unsettling. I had just left my full-time job of 4 years and needed income to pay my bills, so delivering for Uber Eats seemed like a pretty good choice. I should add, I used to deliver for Uber Eats during the lockdown in early 2021 for some extra money and did well, so that was an obvious choice. I enjoyed the freedom of being able to work my own schedule however I saw fit, so I quickly re-downloaded the app and began doing deliveries. In the area I delivered in, between 6 p.m. and 2 a.m. were the best times to go out, and I actually made some pretty decent money during those hours. It was around midnight when I got that oh so familiar ding of a new order. It was a decent order, around $8 for a few miles, so I tapped the screen and accepted the delivery. Right off the bat, I noticed something strange. The customer's name and the order details only showed a bunch of random letters. I've seen some pretty interesting names before, and sometimes every single letter, but never just a bunch of random letters. I chalked it up to a glitch in the system for the most part. People don't want to interact with their drivers, which I actually prefer as an introvert. So that's when I saw the hand to customer option on the order. I let out an audible groan. But nonetheless, I headed to the restaurant to pick up the order. When I got to the restaurant, to my surprise, the order was ready. I grabbed the bag from the worker, thanking them, and tapped the pickup option on the app, and began the route to drop off. The delivery was in a quiet part of the city. As soon as I pulled in, I immediately got an uneasy feeling. It was a part of town I had never been in, small, low-income neighborhood that almost looked abandoned. My GPS led me to an old building on the street, pulled into a parking space, which were right in front of the drop-off. The building was very old, unkept, single-story apartment facing the street. There was almost no lights, with the exception of a faint orange glow from one street lamp nearby. I prefer to back in when I park. I've always done this, something about it just feels safer. So I backed in, right in front of the drop-off door, grabbed the bag, and stepped out. There was this eerie quietness that only made the situation more tense. My car was literally parked 10 feet away, so I didn't have to walk far. I knocked on the door and waited. I heard movement on the inside. About 10 seconds later, the door opened. It was a skinny, darker-skinned woman, probably early to mid-30s. She had these cuts on her hands and arms like she had been in a knife fight. Her mouth was very dark as well, almost like she had wounds or blood on her, but I couldn't tell. Her living room was completely dark, no lights on except the faint blue glow from a distant TV. I greeted her and handed her the bag. Usually it's a quick, friendly, awkward experience, and I move on with the night. But this woman stared at me. She had no emotion whatsoever. Her eyes were glazed over, almost like she was sedated. I smiled, told her to enjoy. She slowly reached and grabbed the bag. I was waiting for her to say something, but she just kept staring at me blankly with no emotion. I was immediately weirded out and felt like something could pop out of the darkness or walk up behind me at any second. So I sped walk back to my car. I heard the door shut right as I got back to my car. I hopped in, locked the doors, and immediately took surveillance of my surroundings. I started driving off. I looked over my passenger seat window and saw her looking out the living room window at me. I got out of there quickly as I could and wrapped up my night shortly after. There was something so creepy and unsettling about this whole experience. From the random letters on the order, the area, the woman's appearance, standing there like an emotionless zombie, staring, not saying a word. If you're thinking about driving for a fast food app, do it, because it could be a great side income. But be careful, sometimes you find yourself in pretty weird situations. Why I no longer go camping, and why I really love my dog. To understand my story, you sort of have to know a tiny bit about trespassing laws in my country, and that we don't have any so long as you're respectful and non-destructive. You can walk over any hill you like, and in my case, camp on any beach of your choosing, so long as once you leave, the area is how you found it. I used to love camping when I was little. Our family would go multiple times a year, with a large group of my parents' friends and their kids. On average, there was maybe 10 of us at a time, which was a bit of a logistical challenge, since we would always head out to this one really remote beach on the coast. Actually, we weren't the only ones. There's always yachts bobbing just off the shore with people in them, and other campers lined up and down the beach. Most of them also had children and teens, so it wasn't a wild party scene. It was very much an informal family holiday spot. There was even a small building with a toilet and shower installed nearby, even though it was in the middle of nowhere. I guess the local council must have figured it out and got sick of people peeing behind bushes. We took a trip up in spring 2011. I'm really bad with time, but I know this because I got my dog in winter of 2010. After picking her out that November from the shelter as a birthday gift from me to me, as I paid her adoption fee. Reddit, I know you love dogs, and she will be very important to this story later on. So let me tell you a little about Parmesan. Parmesan came to me as a 6-month-old puppy who had been rescued from a dogfighting situation. We're not entirely sure what breed she is, but our best guess is a Lurcher Staffy mix. She is a wonderful, well-tempered dog with most people and most dogs, but you absolutely do not threaten her. She'll have you. So by the time of this camping trip, I'd had Parmesan for a few months. She'd never came camping with us before, but far as my family is concerned, dogs go on camping trips. So when we all piled into the car, she came too. Unusually though, none of the family friends could make it, so it was only me, my sister, my dad, and my mom. I didn't mind. I wasn't that attached to the other kids. I'd rather play with my dog, and I'd still have my sister. The drive took the best part of 6 hours, and because we'd left a bit late, although I don't remember why we left later than normal, we arrived at sunset. Not a good time to be building a tent, but we expected to arrive to other campers already set up and the beach illuminated in campfires. The beach was empty. In spite of this, my parents started taking stuff out and trying to build the tent. They asked us to fetch some of the lighter bags from the boot of the car. While they sat pointing a flashlight at the sand to see properly, I rolled down the windows for Parmesan. Before getting out, it was pretty hot for the time of the year, and I wanted her to have air. Always gotta look out for my furry little homie. As we fumbled about in the dark on the beach in the middle of nowheres, where it's pretty spooky, the one road that led to the beach was circular and had a big bridge over the water, meaning it could basically circle around the beach like a big O shape. I wasn't really paying any attention to the road. I was complaining I was tired, as kids are. After maybe 15 minutes of my dad trying to nail the tent into the sand, my mom asked him had he seen that car driving around. It's been a few times. My dad kinda shrugged her off. He's sort of like that. I don't know if he said anything back to her, but after a few more minutes, a car pulled up next to ours on the road and someone got out. It was maybe 15 or 20 feet from the car to where we were, and the lights were pretty low except for the torches. We weren't expecting to see anyone else out here at this point, and I think my mom said it must be the security. I think what she meant was the wildlife trust or something, as they do occasionally come down to be nosy. The guy was walking pretty unevenly. He must have been drunk or high, because he had that stagger to him. There was absolutely no way this guy was sober. Cool, a junkie. Not an unusual find, but it is rare to see them in the wild. As he walked into flashlight range, we realized he was carrying a large knife, maybe 15 inches. Although I was small at the time, so maybe my sense of scale was off. I don't like my dad, but credit to him. Once he saw this, he got up immediately, holding on to the camping mallet, and put us all behind him. The man began to shout wildly at us that we can't camp here, and he was just letting us know. My dad tried to initially be a bit low-key with the guy and told him that was fine, we'd leave, but it didn't seem to work. He kept coming closer to us, so my dad started shouting, and the man kept shouting back. My sister and I were crying. I remember shaking. I was utterly terrified, as I'm sure anyone would be in that situation. It really did seem like this guy and my dad were gonna fight, and I'm going to be honest, I don't fancy my dad's chances. While it's grim to consider, I'm absolutely convinced he would have killed my dad, and possibly us as well once he was done, as I don't think my mother would have had the common sense to run with us. I love her, but she always put Dad and hers relationship above us. This isn't how it went down. A bolt from the black, like a wolf, descended on its prey, took us all by surprise, most of all the man with the knife. In the moment, Parmesan was the apex predator. She got him good by the arm and clamped down hard, ripping his jacket and shredding the skin underneath. He dropped the knife as it had been in the arm she had gotten him by. He kicked her, he punched her, and eventually got her off. He grabbed the knife from the sand and ran back to his car and drove off. Parmesan didn't follow him. She stayed with us, muzzle covered in blood. Quickly as we could, we gathered our things and all got back in the car, all pretty shook up by this incident. I looked Parmesan over. She was okay, but the car window was much more open than I had let it. We think what had happened was when the shouting started, she must have put her paw up on the window gap I'd left for her, as it was an old car that had the roll-down windows, not the electric button. We think she must have been able to hit it with her paw to force it down enough to squeeze out. This is not the end of my story. We were all pretty scared, and since we had the dog with us, we couldn't book a hotel room for the night. My parents decided just to drive home, so we could all feel safe. But first, we had to drive into the nearest town for some petrol, as they were kind of low. I spent this time trying to clean Parmesan up a little. I'd always loved dogs, but what she'd just done for me blew my mind. As we drove into town, we came across a petrol station, but it looked closed. My dad drove up closer to get a better look and stuck his head out the window to get a better look at the sign. My mom asked him what on earth he was doing, and he told her he was trying to see when it opened. Never. My heart sank. Parked in the corner beside a van so we hadn't seen him at first was the man with the knife. He was sitting on the bonnet of his car, using some tissue paper to clean up his arm. It looked pretty bad. Without stopping to refuel or look anywhere else, my dad drove right out of there. He decided to go to the next town over, but this was a move. The next town over was 60 miles away. We didn't have much petrol. We realized as we began to drive, we were going to break down. That's fine, he said. We have AA covered. They come tow us home, or at least somewhere acceptable for the night. Better than staying in that last town. After driving for maybe 5 minutes, lights flashed us from behind. Another car. The same car, the man that had been driving. It was him, following us. He must have realized we were low on petrol. The next half hour was one of the worst half hours of my life. I had a complete and utter breakdown, as did everyone really. I could tell my parents were trying to keep it under wraps so it wouldn't upset us. But we weren't really little kids. We were both double digits. We knew how dangerous this situation was. Dad turned off the radio to conserve petrol, and the man followed us for 55 miles before he peeled away onto another road. Our fuel meter was on the big red E for empty for the last 10 miles. We were driving on fumes. I don't really believe in God, but if he does exist, that was definitely one of his miracles. Once we got there, we drove into a petrol station and refilled to a full tank before driving the rest of the way home. Sister and I slept in the car after that. I only woke up once we made it all the way home. Just grateful nothing worse had happened than that. After getting some sleep, my mom phoned the non-emergency line for the police and reported what had happened. They never got back to her after that, but apparently the woman she spoke to said they may wish to in the future, as he matches the description given for a suspect wanted in relations to murder charges. No idea if he's actually the guy or just a random psycho. As I said, they never got back to her. So what's the takeaway then? Other than the crazy man on the beach, let's not meet. Well, for me, it's that I love Parmesan. She's still with us now, old as the hills and twice as grisly as once. But my mom's friends like to joke. I don't know why she did what she did that day. I couldn't tell you what her thought process was. What I do know is that this poor puppy was born into an environment where they abused and neglected her, only to be rescued and taken to a shelter where her mother and siblings all found homes before her. Despite how badly people treated her, when I took her home, she forgave but never forgot. I think the saying is, I never trust a person who doesn't like a dog, but I always trust a dog who doesn't like a person. They have a very good understanding of human body language, and I think she must have understood how much danger we were in. A strange man listening in on my sister and I's conversation while we were taking photos at an abandoned gas station. My sister, 22 female, is a photographer, and I, 25 female, let her take photos of me on occasion. I had the bright idea that we should go to Salton Sea for pics. Takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours to go all the way around the Salton Sea. One of our first stops was an abandoned gas station. There aren't any houses around the gas station. It's a pretty desert spot. There's where the pumps used to be, the convenience store, and on the left, about 50 to 60 feet away, is a 2-story building. As we were walking around, we were getting a weird feeling. Something just didn't seem right. But we ignored those feelings. We ended up at the 2-story building. The second floor roof is caving in. There's barely any walls, and the stairs to get up to the second floor are on the outside of the building. We got on to taking pictures on the second story, but 10 minutes in, an argument formed between us. It was a weird argument too. It just came out of nowhere. It literally felt like an artificial argument, like I was a Sims character and was just directed to argue. My sister said, "No more pics." I said, "Fine." We go to the stairs and look down, and there's a car with the back of the car facing the stairs, and I mean like literally the trunk of the car was 5 feet away from the bottom of the stairs close. I noticed their driver's side window was rolled down, as well as the passenger behind the driver's seat window was down too. They could have easily heard us, considering the second floor was so caved in. I'd consider it to be a part of the outside. And there wasn't even a door at the top of the stairs, just a huge opening, and we weren't being quiet at all. He definitely heard us. What separated us and the car was a gate. When we were halfway down the stairs, the car sped off. I thought it could be security. This is a bit hard to explain, but from where the car was parked, you need to drive counterclockwise around the building and make 2 lefts, and then you can start driving in the direction of where my car is parked. We were in no rush to my car, and we arrived at my car. The car was pulling up. We were facing south. The car was facing north, 20 feet away from being able to do a U-turn to get next to me. So essentially the car would have had to pull around where the pumps used to be next to us. When I was finally able to get a good look in the car right before it had to do a U-turn, it was an old creepy looking man with a bunch of trash you could see through the windows. He was very obviously not a security guard. At this point, my sister was in the car and I was outside my car with the door pulled open. I threw myself in the car so fast, all while the car was starting the U-turn in the parking lot to get next to me, turning on my car the fastest I've ever turned it on, and sped away. I saw him in my mirror for a little bit, but it didn't last long. He didn't try following. I'm so thankful he didn't come to the stairs. There's only one way in and out of the second story, and if someone is on the stairs, there's no other exit. I think the argument must have been a guardian angel getting us out of there. Thank you guys for listening. Have a good night.